You may have heard about the essay at Oklahoma University that's causing a bit of an uproar. My initial thoughts and questions that arise after reading it are: if God is making women in his image of beauty, does that imply a non binary or trans God? Or does that mean that God, as a man, is embracing womanly characteristics, thus transcending gender norms that we must have created? Or if we're set on claiming God created gender norms, should God traversing across masculine and feminine norms be celebrated and emulated? Now, I don't know how to grade a psychology paper, but I have graded religion papers, and I want to look at one of the arguments made in the paper. Presumably, this student is looking at Genesis 2:18 and is correct in claiming that Ezer does not denote a secondary status, though it would be a stretch to think that the author of Genesis 2 is promoting an egalitarian worldview when looking at the broader context and patriarchal narrative surrounding this verse. But helper is an adequate translation. I don't know why the student is including kenegdo every time they insert the Hebrew phrase. That's just a preposition that accounts for some translations describing the helper as being near or in the presence of or perhaps suitable. It's an unnecessary addition that indicates the student is unfamiliar with biblical Hebrew. If you don't know a language, don't try to use it. But then the student goes on to say the Holy Spirit is also called a helper, probably referring to John 14:26. Now, taking my own advice, I can't read biblical Greek, but I know enough to know that one, John is written in Greek, not Hebrew, and two, the Greek translation, the Septuagint, uses different words in Genesis from John in these words translated as helper. The argument went from understanding Hebrew to completely disregarding the original language and is just looking at English translations. And going by the capitalization of helper, my gut says KJV, which, if we're going to cite the Bible, which the student never actually did, it's generally standard to include the translation and verse. Then the student goes on to claim that women were made in God's image of a helper and in the image of his beauty. I am unsure where the idea is from because it is not in the Bible and is likely an outpouring of this student's Christian theology, which should be included in a section regarding theology and properly cited, not in a section regarding biblical studies. The rest of the argument in this section that I skipped over makes baseless claims without any defense, and to deserve a decent grade would have to bridge the gap between these leaps in logic, which could be done fairly simply by citing sources or preemptively answering questions that I mentioned at the beginning. My hot take is that while this paper may not deserve a 0, it certainly does not deserve a passing grade. But if we really take seriously the hateful and harmful language used in this essay, then a grade of 0 is certainly earned.